Hello, everybody. Thank you for watching the SAT review video. So the way this video is intended to be used is I will display a question on the screen, and then basically you'll solve the problem on your own. So you'll pause the video before you see the explanation. And once you have the problem solved, then you can go through, watch my explanation, watch my strategy, and get everything you can out of my explanation. So yeah, without further ado, let's start with some math. We have some math first, and then some grammar, and then a reading passage. So go ahead and solve this problem, and then unpause the video. So this is one of those problems where we are definitely going to want to plug in the answers. So we'll plug in -2 for s, right? I know it's not x and y, but they say s is the one that comes first. So if we plug -2 in for s there and 0 in for t there, we'll get -4 minus 0, which is not 10, so no need to check the other equation. A is incorrect. Then we'll plug in b, 2 for s, -2 for t, and then we get 2 times 2, so 4, -3 times -2, which is 6, so 4 plus 6 does get us 10, so that's good so far. And then we'll plug in 2 right in there, -2 right in there, 12 plus 4. So that one works. And remember, with this strategy, when you're plugging in answers, once you get the answer, you don't need to check the other ones. That's not to say that that works for every strategy, but for when you're plugging in the answers, you can absolutely just move on, save your time for the next one. Okay, give this one a go. So make sure to pause the video and then unpause once you are finished. So this is a question where we probably want to make up numbers. I don't know why I'm erasing. So we'll make up numbers for y and z, and make sure you don't just say, oh, 1 and 2, right? That's no good. You need to make sure that they make sense with the original equation. So I think it's nice and easy to just say y equals 2, since that's all there is in the numerators. So if y is 2, well, 2 plus something needs to give us 5 in the denominator, so we'll make z 3. And then which of the following must also be true if y is 2 and z is 3? Well, does y over z equal 2/3? And the answer is absolutely yes. But with this strategy, as opposed to the previous one, you do need to try all the other answer choices. So you need to make sure you're at least eliminating the other ones. Z over y is 3 over 2, not 5 over 2, so b is out. And once you eliminate an answer, you never need to come back to it if you need to do extra work. So if it's eliminated, just avoid it moving forward. Y minus z is 2 minus 3, which is -1, so that's no good. And then y times z is 6, so not 4. So we have our answer. Keep in mind, if you got another answer that worked, what you can do is you can go back and make up new numbers for y and z if 2 and 3 gave you 2 answers that worked. Okay, go ahead and pause the video and try this one. All right, so hopefully you've tried it already. Definitely a good idea to FOIL, and then we'll end up pairing the variables here. So 2x times 3x gives us 6x squared. 2x times b gives us 2bx. If you wrote 2xb, that's fine too. I like to keep the x's at the end though. Insides 3ax, and then the last just ab. And that's going to equal all that stuff up there. So 6x squared plus cx plus 12. And now what we do is we pair our variables. Anything with an x squared over here has to be equal to anything with an x squared over here. Not much going on there, right? 6x squared equals 6x squared. So you can kind of just cross those off. That's not helping us in any way, shape, or form. But when it comes to the x's, 2bx and 3ax on the left, and then cx on the right. So how many x's do I have on the left? Well, I have 2bx's on the left, and I also have 3ax's on the left. So that's going to equal the number of x's on the right, which is just cx's. So similarly, I'll do that with the constants, the guys without the x's. So I have ab constants on the left and 12 constants on the right. So I know a times b is 12, and I also know a plus b is 7. So what I can do is I can kind of just kind of figure out what that is just by, figuring out factors of A and B. It's got to be 3 and 4. 3 times 4 is 12. 3 plus 4 gives us 7. So A could be 3 and B could be 4, or vice versa. We don't really know, and that's probably why there are multiple answers for each answer choice. So maybe A is 4, B is 3. And we'll try both, but once you get one, you probably don't need to get the other. So if A is 3 and B is 4, we can get C just by doing 2 times 4, which is 8, plus 3 times 3, which is 9. So 17 is C in that case. So the answer is probably just going to be D, but we'll double check with the other case. So 2 times B, now B is going to be 3, and A is going to be 4. And if you simplify that, it should be 6 plus 12, which is 18. So our answer is D. So just remember, with pairing the variable, in the simplest terms, however many x's you have on the left side must be equal to the number of x's you have on the right side. So A would be 3 here. And sometimes there are problems as simple as this. So, all right, hopefully by now you're not sick of hearing my voice because we're just getting started. What is the sum of all values of P that satisfy this? So go ahead and pause, and I'll solve in a second. So definitely a good idea to divide everything by 3 first. This will not change what your answer ends up being. Just as long as you do the same thing to both sides, you will get the same answer. So if I divide everything by 3, I get that. You'll get the same answer if you don't do that, but it's just going to make your life a lot easier. And then there are 2 ways to do the problem now. You can use the quadratic formula since it's not factorable. So please have this memorized for Saturday. Be embarrassing if I screwed it up right here. Opposite of B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. So A is the coefficient on the squared variable. So A equals 1. B equals the coefficient on the not squared variable, -6. And then C is your constant. And make sure when you use the quadratic formula, everything is on one side and it equals 0. So now we'll just go ahead and plug into the quadratic formula. So negative B is positive 6 plus or minus the square root of B squared. -6 squared, the negative goes away, minus 4 times A times C all over 2A. 2 times 1 is just 2. And then we get 6 plus or minus the square root of, this is 36 minus 12, so 24 all over 2. So we can simplify this, and I guess I'll show you just to make sure we're comfortable with simplifying radicals. So root 24 turns into root 4 times root 6, and root 4 is 2, so 2 root 6. So this becomes 6 plus or minus 2 root 6 all over 2. And that's kind of a bonus step. You can get the answer without doing that. And when we divide both of our numerator terms by 2, we get 3 plus or minus just root 6. Now, they ask us for the sum of all the values. They don't just ask us for the solutions. So we have 2 answers here. We have 3 plus the square root of 6, and we have 3 minus the square root of 6. And they want us to add them, right? That's what sum means. So when we add them, I'll do that in purple up here. 3 plus root 6 plus the other solution, 3 minus root 6. The positive root 6 and the negative root 6 cancel, and we just get 6 as our answer. So that is method number 1. And I think that's the harder method, to be honest, because you'll see the second method, and this is like a bonus if you can remember this. It's kind of like that slope thing, where if you remember the shortcut to finding slope when you're in standard form, you'll save a little bit of time, but it's not like you need to know that. So the shortcut here, the sum of the solutions is always just negative B over A for a quadratic. So negative 18, so positive 18 over A, which is 3, and you get 6. So negative B over A is your sum of solutions. So it would specifically need to ask this question. And if you have any questions on that, we will be meeting on Friday, so you can ask me then. Pause the video and give this one a try. Let's see how long. It's been almost 10 minutes so far. See what we can do. Hopefully hold it to around 45 minutes. Maybe shorter if we're lucky. All right, so in the circle above, arc WXY, which means this arc right here, is 6 pi in length. So that's not our angle, right? Our angle is 72 degrees. 6 pi is our length of the arc around the circle, which is part of our circumference. If WZY is 72 degrees, what is the radius of the circle? So keep in mind, we can figure out what proportion of the circle we're dealing with just by doing 72 over 360. So 72 over 360, hopefully you can hear my iPhone calculator clicking. That gives us 0.2. I don't know why I wrote 0.6. 0.2, which is 1/5 of the circle. So we're dealing with 1/5 of the circle, which means this is 1/5 of the circumference. So you can write 1/5, why am I screwing that up? 1/5 of the circumference equals 6 pi. Or if you figure, okay, 1/5 of the circumference, just multiply that by 5, and you know the circumference is 30 pi. Either way, you'll get the circumference is 30 pi. I think this is nice because it works out even if this isn't a nice number. Like if you get 2/7, I don't think it's as intuitive as just multiplying that by 5. So you could say like 2/7 times the circumference equals whatever it is. And obviously in this case it's 6 pi, but I'm just giving another example. So I'll get that off the screen. Okay, so we know the circumference is 30 pi, and on the equation sheet on the front of the SAT, you know that circumference equals 2 pi r. So we'll set this equal to 2 pi r. The pi's cancel, and we get the radius is just 15. All right, pause the video and give it a go. Okay, so the question asks us, and by the way, none of this really matters. All the information is just kind of given to us up there. So it says, if a person is chosen at random from those who use their smartphones at least 1 hour, which means we are no longer concerned about the people that use their iPhones less than an hour. So we can kind of ignore those people, which kind of means that these totals are no longer valid. So keep that in mind. What is the probability that the person belonged to group A if we're choosing from one of these people? So now our total should be 142 plus 91. That's the total number of people that were surveyed. So we have 233 total. Remember, part over whole when you're finding probability. So how many of these were from group A? 64 plus 54, which should be 118 out of 233. So B. Sometimes you might see, like instead of saying if a person is chosen at random from those who use their smartphone at least 1 hour, you might see like given ... given they use their smartphones for at least 1 hour. That means the same thing. It just narrows down the pool from which you're choosing. And again, if you are thinking of any questions, if any of this doesn't make sense, please just mark that down. Feel free to text me even, and we'll make sure to go over that on Friday. All right. The iron content of a sample of hematite in grams is 40% greater than a low-grade iron ore. Pause the question, give it a go. When we see 40% greater, we must be using the number 1.4 or 1.40. A 40% increase is 1.4. Remember, you cannot work backwards and use 0.6. Under no circumstances, when you see 40% greater, will you be using 0.6. Never, ever, ever. So first off, we know the low-grade iron is 30 grams, and the hematite is 40% greater. So our answer should definitely be greater than 30. So we can cross those off. So the iron content of the low-grade iron ore is 30 grams. So we'll increase that by 40%, and we'll get our answer. So remember the equation, original amount times your percentage equals your new. And by percentage, I mean like a 40% increase, you multiply by 1.4. Or a 30% decrease, you'd multiply by 0.7. So, moving on. Pause the video and give this one a try. So they want to know which will change the least if the 24-inch measurement is removed. So at first thought, I realized that the range is going to change pretty substantially because the range is the highest number minus the lowest. And instead of 45 minus 24, it's going to be 45 minus 34. So it's going to change by 10 if I remove the 24. So range, that's going to change substantially. If you get rid of the mean, or not get rid of the mean, that would be ridiculous. I don't know what that even means. If you get rid of 24, the mean will change, right? If you get rid of a small value, like if you take a bunch of tests and you do really poorly on one, if you get rid of that, your average in school will go up. So the mean will change substantially. The median, however, remember, the median is the middle number. So if I cross off the first 5, cross off the last 5, I can see my median to start is going to be 39.5. But if I get rid of the 24, so now my median, cross off the first 5, cross off the last 5, cross off the next 3 and the last 3, and my median is 40. So it only went from 39.5 to 40. Very, very small change. So the median is the answer. And by the way, remember you need to know the words standard deviation. It just means how spread out your data is. The more spread out, the larger your standard deviation is. The less spread out, the smaller your standard deviation is. You don't need to know how to calculate it. You just need to know how to compare one standard deviation to another. So something that looks like this, pretty spread out, large standard deviation. Something like this, small standard deviation, not so spread out. So we have mean, median, range, standard deviation, then mode. Mode is just whichever number comes up the most. So I kind of mutilated this, but I guess we can see that the mode, we have a few modes. We have 243s, 245s, 240s, 236s. If we had a number that came up 3 times, that would be the mode. So we have a bunch of modes there. Okay, 2 more math questions. Pause it and give it a try. The function has 4 distinct zeros. Remember, a 0 is an x-intercept. When you see x-intercepts, you need to be thinking zeros, solutions, roots, right? They all mean the same thing. And then when you have your 0, let's say your 0 is x equals 5, you can get the factor x minus 5. So factors are highly related to zeros. So anyway, we need 4 x-intercepts. 1, 2, 3, that's no good. That only counts for 1, 2, 3, 4. So C is our answer. That is a double root, which means something to us, and I'll talk about that briefly. But the answer is C here. So that being a double root, I'm just going to estimate. I'm going to say this is -2, this is -1, this is +1, and that's 2. Our equation would look something like this. X plus 2 squared, since it's a double root, since it just touches that axis and doesn't cross it like the other ones. And then x plus 1 for the -1, x minus 1 for the +1, and then x minus 2 for the +2. So this has 1, 2, it's not working. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that has 1, 2, 3. All right, pause this and give it a try. So you can do this the old-fashioned way and just solve for acceleration, what it's asking for. So we can isolate acceleration by getting everything away from it. So I will subtract v naught t on both sides. And then I can multiply both sides by 2 to get rid of that. And then I can divide both sides by t squared. So divide by t squared, and that cancels. So this is my acceleration. So now we need to basically figure out which equation looks just like this. Now, don't get confused here because this looks super similar, but it's missing this t. And just because it's missing one thing means it's not wrong, or it's not right, excuse me. If it's missing one thing, it is wrong. So that's no good. This has a -2, which probably tells me it's wrong. So I'll cross off C. And this one doesn't have a denominator. So that one probably can't be right because I know the t squared isn't really going to cancel completely. So the answer is going to be A. And the reason it's A is because we can split this up into two different fractions. So we can have 2 and then d over t squared, v naught t over t squared, right? So that over that, and then that over that. And the 2 just stays outside. And we see the t here will cancel that t with one of the t's on the bottom, which leaves us with exactly that. Now the other way, and I recommend this, make up numbers. So we have d, v naught, t, and a. I'm not going to go through this completely for sake of time because we're already at 20 minutes. But what you could do is you could make up numbers for v naught, t, and a, and plug those in to get d. Right? You don't want to just make up numbers for all 4. You want to make up numbers for the 3 on the more complicated side of the equation and then figure out what d should be. And then you'll see which equation works with all those numbers you made up. And if you'd like, we can, of course, go through that on Friday. You got to know this. This is a must know, this whole sheet, of course. So let's put it to use, give this problem a try. Okay, so with transition word problems, no matter where the transition is in the sentence, it's always transitioning from the previous sentence, right? So we're looking at the previous sentence and seeing how that connects with the next sentence. It seems like it would be very difficult to know how ill someone was if that person is now a cadaver and thus cannot speak or exhibit symptoms. A recent study and procedure suggests that the ability to differentiate between carrying an illness and experiencing an illness may not be so far away. So that seems like a contrast. However, and remember, however is our favorite transition word. Our eyes should immediately go towards however when we see that as an option. And therefore and thus are the same for all intents and purposes, so we're not going to pick either of those. Okay. Pause this and give it a try. The term was coined in 1997 at the height of the popularity of genomics. So notice how we have a comma and we had a sentence before. So we need a fragment after the comma, right? Comma separates sentence from fragment or fragment and then sentence. The term was coined in 1997 at the height of the popularity of genomics. So fragment, the study of how genes combine to form living organisms. And by the way, short answers are good. That's the shortest, and it makes the most sense. A sounds ridiculous if you read through that, and then B and C give you sentence, comma, sentence, which is not a thing. You need a semicolon if you wanted sentence and then sentence, or a period. So remember, a period and a semicolon are the same for our purposes, right? They both separate a sentence from another sentence. All right, pause and give it a try. The problem, double comma, eliminate that for now. The problem was that the streets remained mixed use by streetcars, pedestrians, horses, and the new automobile. First off, I think the way I just read it sounded fine without any punctuation. We can't use the colon because we don't have a full sentence before the colon. Right? The problem was that streets remained mixed use by. That's not a sentence. The double comma, you can't really eliminate everything in between there and read it normally. And then this comma, we don't have sentence and fragment. We have fragment, fragment. Less punctuation is good. If you have two answers that make sense and one has less punctuation than the other, pick the one with less punctuation. So the answer there is A. Pause the video, give it a try. The answer is simple. That's a sentence, right? So we can use the colon since we have a full sentence before. The semicolon seems good until we realize that we have a team of speechwriters that comes after, which is a fragment. So semicolon separates sentence, sentence. So A is incorrect. So we'll pick B. D is incorrect because the answer is simple, a team. That is not a full sentence. We need a full sentence before the colon. Pause the video and give it a try. All right, so we are basically combining these two sentences. Redundancy is a bad thing. The fact that that says fame twice in a row probably tells us we're not picking that. And C and D both say the word fame multiple times as well. So the answer is B, and that's because we have a comma that is separating a sentence from a fragment or a fragment from a sentence. The glory may not go to precisely the right person, but there are larger rewards to speechwriting than personal fame, which is a sentence, which can be difficult to obtain and fleeting once achieved. Fragment. Sentence, comma, fragment. Perfect. Okay, give it a try. To make this paragraph most logical, sentence 4 should be placed where? So, sentence 4, remember these are the things that label the sentence numbers. India's highest grossing film in 2014 was called PK and was directed by this dude. So you need to ask yourself, since we have the option to delete, do we want this sentence anywhere? Which is nice that we could possibly delete it if we don't need it, if we don't like any of the locations. So we want to be thinking about a few things. Can we place it next to a sentence it goes with? And are we splitting up sentences that have to go together, which we don't want to do? So where it is now, we want to ask ourselves, do sentences 3 and 5 go together? So take a second and figure that out. Yeah, so sentences 3 and 5 should be going together. So definitely don't want to leave it where it is. Placed after sentence 2, well, do 2 and 3 need to go together? Take a second. And those seem like they need to go together, and placing 4 in between them seems illogical. And then at the end of the paragraph, just as most American films do not make it beyond national borders, most Indian films remain where they are in boundaries of India. And then we just throw in their highest grossing film. In all honesty, no, we're going to delete it. And the point is, we don't really care about which one was the most, the highest grossing film. It seems just out of place for this paragraph, so we will delete it. All right, and then the last grammar question we will go over in this video. So take a second, pause the video. Hopefully pretty quickly we saw that B, C, and D are all bad because we don't have a sentence before the semicolon. Semicolon separates sentence and sentence. The colon needs a sentence before. Sentence, colon, and then list or an idea. So it's got to be A, which works nicely with the double dash. We can get rid of the double dash and everything in between. So we'll get rid of all of this. These varied influences led to Ray's unique style. It works perfectly if we remove that stuff. So next I have a reading passage. So I'm going to put the passage on the screen. So I'll kind of just put it on there for a second. If you're going to read the passage to start, feel free to just pause. And then I'll put the questions on here as well. So what I've been kind of emphasizing more and more is answering as many of these questions as possible without reading the whole passage. So do your thing, and this will be something we go over on Friday. So I'll give you all the answers on Friday.